Just a reminder, you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is a new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at John Middlekauff to get notified when I go live. What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff, 3 and Out podcast. How are we doing? Aaron Rodgers thoughts, every single angle you could think of, we will discuss coming up, as well as some other NFL stories. But obviously not just the story of the league, but one of the biggest stories in America today is Aaron Rodgers has a torn Achilles and is out for the season. But first, make sure you subscribe to 3 and Out podcast, wherever you may listen, Apple, Spotify, you guys know the drill. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hammer that like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the Volumes YouTube page. As you can see on my hat, 3 and Out FlexFit hat, just go to thevolume.com, search the different shows. We have trucker hats. We obviously have FlexFit hats, as well as other Volume merch. Recommend it. And before we dive into some football talk, right before I came over to record this podcast, I'm doing it a little later than usual. My girlfriend said, "Do you know that Fresno State's playing ASU?" I'm like, "Yeah, I knew that." She's like, "You want to go to the game?" I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's just get out of the house Saturday night, go to the football game, have a good time, watch my dogs take on the Sun Devils and beat them for their second Power 5 win in 3 weeks. I said, yeah, it's a great idea. And you know what? Let's use the Gametime app, because I have it on my phone. You should have it on your phone as well. It happens to be the official ticketing app of this podcast. If you go to your smartphone, go to your apps and download the Gametime app. And when you do, buy a pair of tickets to a football game, to a playoff baseball game, if you want to go to a concert, a comedy show. And when you do, use the code JOHN, that's my name, JOHN, and get $20 off your first pair of tickets. Highly recommend it. Don't even need a thank you. Just get out of the house, go enjoy yourself, significant other, your son, your daughter, a parent, and go have fun and do it on us. Promo code John, Gametime app, any single event. Go to the Gametime app, search it. If you can find it, you can buy tickets and you can get a discount with the promo code John. Okay, Aaron Rodgers. I think we alluded to it on Monday night when we were recording the podcast, that all signs indicated that the Achilles was ripped, which we all know is a season ender. And Rap Sheet had tweeted it, Solid mentioned it, and we found out officially on Tuesday morning that it's true. He's done. And it's a wrap. And I'm recording this podcast at well past dinner time, and I've been thinking about Aaron Rodgers, the Jets, and the entire situation, the impact of that team on the league, on the division, all day long. It's consumed my thoughts. Now, I got issues. I'm not going to lie. I probably think about football too much, right? For a guy that's not a coach or a player. It takes a lot of my headspace in the fall. But this is something I'll never forget. And I mentioned this the other night, that visual of him sitting down there and then a couple minutes later on the cart. I'll never forget that as long as I live. And listen, my memory, it feels like it's slipping every day. But for whatever reason, sports and specific plays and incidents and injuries are things that stick in my mind. And that's one that will be entrenched in my memory forever. And I was thinking about, I had a friend tell me years ago, and he's part of just an incredible business that makes a lot of money, and his family owns it. And he goes, a lot of people think that we're just, basically bulletproof. Nothing can ever go wrong. But they're wrong. Like at any moment, a law can change. Maybe the lobbyists in the industry we're in don't have the same juice. A politician makes it their basically life's work to change the industry standards, and things can flip at the flick of a fingers, right? At the blink of an eye, and things happen fast and you don't realize they're coming, even though things are going really well, right? We know so many people who get divorced that when they get married, you're like, God, these people are in love, head over heels for each other. And then a couple years later, they're divorced. They can't stand each other. Like, things change fast. Personally, professionally, we see it all over in every walk of life. I don't think there is anything quite like, because even when most businesses go under, I think the rule of thumb is it's a slow bleed and then it happens suddenly. But like when a business goes bankrupt, if you talk to the people on the inside, they say, yeah, we've been having issues for a while, right? Like the newspaper industry. Like it happened. It feels like it happened pretty quick. I don't know anyone who ever has a newspaper in their hand anymore, but it was going on for a long time when things were trending the wrong way, right? And I can just speak for the industry I'm in. Same thing speaks for radio, right? Podcasts are growing and growing and growing, and most local terrestrial radio and even national terrestrial radio struggles and struggles and struggles. There is nothing like an injury in sports, especially to a powerful star player, whether it's in the NBA, whether it's a star pitcher in baseball, whether it's obviously a quarterback or a star impact pass rusher or tackle or something in football. When that guy's lying on the ground or in the cart, everyone knows it. We are all thinking the same thing. It's over. Like, we have a major problem. Now, a lot of other positions, if you lose a defensive lineman, you can figure it out. If you lose your right tackle, you can kind of coach around it. There is no coaching around a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. I've been saying this. People have been DMing me this for however long I've been telling this story, since I read it somewhere, for the last 6 months, 8 months, a year, is the Tom Moore quote about Peyton Manning and why they don't give their backup quarterbacks any reps. Because if Peyton Manning goes down, we're fucked, and we don't practice fucked. There's a reason you traded your first-round pick, and you were prepared to trade another first-round pick because you planned on Aaron Rodgers starting and taking every snap for you this year, is because he's Aaron freaking Rodgers. And he changes the trajectory of your franchise. And he puts you in a position, were they going to win the Super Bowl? Probably they were going to have some offensive line issues. But would they have easily won last night? And would they have won 11 games pretty easily with that defense and Aaron Rodgers just playing average football for his standards? 100%. And now I've seen a lot of talk about Saleh and Joe Douglas, and a lot of people DMing me and in the comments, like, could these guys get fired if this goes wrong? Or they wouldn't deserve to get fired. This is not their fault. And it's true. Because anytime that you make a risky move, part of the risk is it could be a disaster, right? Part of the risk is it might not work, and this could have major consequences. I don't care at what level you are taking the risk, right? Whether it's speeding on the freeway, whether it's getting married, whether it's getting into a partnership in business, whether it's trading for a quarterback, right? We've seen it basically starting last year with Russell Wilson. That's a disaster for the Broncos. If they could get a do-over on that one, we all know they would gladly take it, but they can't. And he's not even hurt. He's just not nearly as good as he once was. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers was going to be an MVP level player this year, though it was pretty clear the guy wasn't just rejuvenated. He was in a great headspace, and he was having a lot of fun playing football. I think the same could be said for Tom Brady when he went to Tampa. He looked miserable that last year in New England. The 19 year when the Dolphins ended up beating him the last game of the season, and then they lost to the Titans in the playoffs. Tom was not having fun. Now, Tom is focused, and he's not always Mr. Smiley on the football field, but you could tell football was not the same to him as it was the next year when he was winning in Tampa. And that's a little bit what it felt like with Aaron Rodgers, is like, God, he's just not even just all in. He thinks the team's good, but he's rejuvenated as a human. And I've talked about this. I've moved. I've changed jobs. When you make the right move, it can do wonders for the soul. It can do wonders for the mental. It can put you in a great headspace. And being in a great headspace when you're as talented as someone as Aaron Rodgers, the sky is the limit, even though they clearly had some limitations with their tackles, right? And to lose him like that is just franchise altering. It really is, because they traded a first round pick. They owe the guy $75+ million, and they're really lucky that he gave the money back. And you don't have any options. Like, we're going into week 2. This isn't August 1st. What trades are you going to make? Kirk Cousins, who maybe Washington punts on, well, they're not just going to give him away. He makes a lot of money. That's very complicated, right? You're going to beg Matt Ryan to come out of retirement? He stinks. I think Tom Brady has hammered this home. I'm not coming back. And let's face it, Tom Brady, even if he was interested, is crazy to say, but at 46 years old, with his lack of mobility, makes no sense behind this offensive line. So they kind of, and I know they reiterated and they hammered home, we're rolling with Zach Wilson. And I understand why they're doing that. He actually, in a weird way, because of his mobility, is a positive, but can he play the position? And on the surface, they made the right move, getting Aaron Rodgers. But was it really that complicated? Like, you would have done it, I would have done it, we all would have done it. But now that it failed, it puts them in a position to really expose the worst move they've ever made, or has the potential to be, and that's Zach Wilson. If Zach Wilson is awful, it's hard to judge him last night, but like, now we're going to see for a little while. And if he looks like the guy we saw last year, even if the teammates and the operation are more willing to just embrace him and like him a little more than they did last year, and part of that was his fault, but he is just bad, like he's a bottom 5 quarterback, that's the type thing that just makes people question your ability, right? Because my mom could tell you that trading for Aaron Rodgers is an easy move. We all know he's good. Like, that's not a complicated thing to do. Maybe the logistics of the exact draft picks and the contract and stuff like that is why, GMs have to deal with. But yeah, I want to trade for Aaron Rodgers. He's interested in coming here. Like, oh, okay. Tough one, right? Oh, Giannis, Kevin Durant want to come to my team? Okay, cool. Like, it's a pretty much a no-brainer. But the Zach Wilson thing was not. And that, like Trey Lance, has not aged well. And most people, I think most Jets fans, because of their experience with him last year, think he's one of the worst players they've ever seen. And if this year goes bad, like, it can't be argued, even with their flaws with the offensive line, their team is pretty stacked. Running backs are good. Garrett Wilson's a star. The other wide receivers are more than functional, and their defense is elite. I mean, the pass rush is incredible. Sauce, even if Diggs made a couple of plays, like beside Diggs and Tyreek, and obviously they got to play those guys 4 times, Sauce is locking up the majority of guys they're going to play, right? So, and the other guys on defense are fantastics. I just wonder if this thing could get weird. And I just don't think they have other options. And in fairness, like, what would their other options be? Jacoby Brissett. What is that doing? I mean, really, you drafted this guy too. I don't blame them, especially if they think he's improved a little bit, to see what he has. But if it doesn't go well, what do you do? And here's the other predicament they're in, is I highly doubt, even though emotions are high, Aaron's just going to tap out, right? I saw AJ Hawk, who's very close friends with Aaron, who says he would be stunned if this is how he goes out. So in theory, right, you already start planning, well, Aaron will rehab, even if he is older, and this is an injury that has knocked out a lot of older players into their careers, right? Kobe was never the same. Dan Marino, I saw him talking with Kevin Clark today on the internet, that he was never the same, even though he said the ability with doctors and the surgery last year, or I mean, back in it wasn't last year, it was 30 plus years ago. Actually, it was 30 plus years ago, was a lot different and clearly not as not as buttoned up as it is now at the rehab. But it's still usually like an 18-month injury, and so 12 months from now would be week 1. And you're talking about a 40-year-old guy. And usually the older you get, it takes you longer to recover from these injuries. So this is beyond a complicated issue. This is a devastating injury. I stand by this. I think it's one of the worst injuries I've ever seen. Tom Brady got hurt game 1. Yeah, he was like 26, 27, 28 years old. He'd already won a bunch. And I mean, as history shows, he was able to come back, but players come back from ACL injuries, right? Jimmy Garoppolo hurt his ACL, came back, still rocking and rolling. Like, I would say an ACL injury would be better than this injury. You could argue, of all the injuries, right? On like what Alex Smith went through. I mean, getting a leg amputated, potentially something like that, but just like an ACL, a shoulder, an elbow, you could argue this is the worst possible injury. It really is, especially for a guy whose game was different now than maybe it was 5-6 years ago, but still he had enough athleticism that he could keep things alive and kind of freelance to the ability that any 39 or 40-year-old is able to. Even if he is able to come back, does he become much more like some of the old school pocket quarterbacks and have limited to no mobility, especially if he's going to rush back and try to be able to play at the beginning of next season? So overall, what I want to get at here is, one, they had to make this trade, clearly. but there was a lot of risk involved. It was a 39, 40-year-old guy who, like, sometimes those guys get hurt. Sometimes there's a wear and tear on their joints, on, the different areas in which they need to play that go out easier than some younger guys. And I'm not pretending to be a doctor here, and I'm not even going to blame it on the field. I don't pretend to know, and listen, clearly a lot of the players are very down on turf, and I understand why they are, especially at MetLife. It feels like a lot of guys have been injured, even though I read that they got new turf this year. I'd be cool with everyone going universal grass, but that's not the case right now. Would that have happened no matter what? I don't know. But I do know that he's now gone, and I do think this just puts the Jets franchise on a completely different trajectory. Because at least you'd say for a couple years, and I've been saying this forever, he did not have to win an MVP. He did not have to win a Super Bowl. If he just had the Joe Montana Chiefs career for 2 years, get him to the playoffs a couple times, get him to an AFC championship game, I think that would be a huge positive on the guy's resume. And now I think the conversation is fair to be had. Like, do we ever see him again? And if he does come back, is it one of those that's hard to watch? Is he not nearly the same player? Which would be, perfectly understandable, a 40-year-old guy coming off an Achilles. So, and you got to watch Zach Wilson. And I said last night, I feel for every Jets fan, because fans, especially, NFL fans, are just, you spend a lot of time reading about your team, the build up for every game, and then 3 to 3.5 hours you're dedicating to sitting down and consuming your team. And that's where all the money in the league comes from, right? For everybody associated with the league, players, coaches, and the owners. And hell, I'm sitting here because of fans. And that's just something that feels like you don't wish that pain upon anybody. And that franchise specifically, the cursed nature of just the narrative around it, like they aren't supposed to have nice things offensively. They've been basically an anemic franchise the majority of my life. It just almost feels like it's destined to be this way. And that sucks, because it finally felt like we got Aaron Rodgers. We can just be competitive and compete, even if we don't beat the Chiefs or win the Super Bowl. If we win 11 games and are in the second round of the playoffs, that would be, fans would be elated. And now it feels like that ended before it even started. And that sucks. When it comes to the AFC East, things dramatically change over the last 48 hours. The Dolphins offense, I don't know if it's that shocking. We saw last year when Tua was on the field, they were pretty dynamic. Tyreek Hill is easily a top 5 non-quarterback on offense, and you could argue in the entire league. Like, he's a dominant player. He's an unstoppable force. Jalen Waddle's excellent. We know how good McDaniel is with just schemes. I think the question is their defense. Fangio's a stud. Like, easily a top 2 or 3 defensive coordinator in the league. And if you give him the right players, more than likely he's going to be the best defensive coordinator in the league. I don't think they got the players. There was a reason they traded for Jalen Ramsey, and he's injured, and he's not coming back for a while. So you can't be a high-level defense in college, and definitely the pros, which is, a chess game, if you don't have the personnel. Got a couple pass rushers, but that's about it. And we saw, the Chargers score with ease. And I think it's going to be a problem for them all season long. The Pats, they're actually probably a pretty solid team. They're going to be good on defense. Their offense is not going to be nearly as anemic as it was last year. We know special teams will be a point of emphasis for every Belichick team. In theory, they should be pretty buttoned up, even though they haven't been the last couple of years. Maybe that's just a running theme now for Bill Belichick. And obviously the Bills, they got a Josh Allen problem. I saw Josh Allen said after the game last night that I'm the reason we lost. And he's not wrong. He was the reason they lost. The constant 4 turnovers, that can't happen. Especially the YOLO interceptions in a game where they had no chance, Josh. Just be careful with the ball. If anything, throw it at someone's feet. Do not throw it to the other colored jersey. And I think this division's wide open. I'm not just going to write off the Bills, because if Josh Allen plays well, he's the best player in this division. I think the best unit in this division is Miami's offense if Tua is on the field. But when he plays a full season, that'll be the first time in a long time since Alabama, right? So, and not his senior year at Alabama. Or I guess it was technically his junior year. But you know what I mean? And the Pats, it's hard to just pencil them in because their personnel is okay, but it's not, it's not 11 wins. And the Jets, this would give you, I guess, some hope as the division feels kind of weird, right? The Dolphins defense is terrible. But I don't know. Like, do you envision Zach Wilson beating Bill Belichick? They play in a couple weeks. I don't. That's not a good matchup for him. Hell, it's not really a good matchup for any Jets quarterback. The only guy that was going to have a chance was going to be Aaron Rodgers. But you win this game, even if you play Dallas and get your ass kicked, you're 1-1, you're playing the Patriots, you're like, we'll take our chances. I just think the AFC East now, I obviously picked the Jets to win the division. I don't feel like that anymore. But I don't feel great. Like I'm not just chalking. Everyone's acting like Miami's the greatest thing since sliced bread. They can't stop anybody, and I can't pick the Pats. The Bills make me really nervous because they're quarterback. So this division's about to get really weird. Football is back in full swing with another week of epic games. And who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Nobody's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Get in on the NFL Week 2 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use the code JOHN, John, to sign up. New customers can bet $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See dkng.co/football for eligibility. Terms and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Okay, a couple other things. Chris Jones. I think one problem with holdouts is so many former players, just have platforms or in the media. Hell, we got Richard Sherman. They're all inclined to always, and definitely the media is just always inclined to take the players, right? We're going to take the millionaire stance over the billionaire stance. And I've always had a very simple outlook when it comes to this. Like, what is the right business move? I don't care really about either party. It's not my money. I do not care. And when the money's coming, it's not coming to me. So I just look at it objectively, take a step back and go, does this make sense? When Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack held out, I said, those guys are smart. TJ Watt last year, do not take a snap. Bosa this year, 100% on his side. But then they're the running backs like, bro, nothing's going to change, fellas. The money ain't going to come. So you might as well sign this franchise tag that is not $75,000. It happens to be $11 million. It's a lot of money. And some of you guys haven't exactly proved it for a long period of times. A couple of you are one-year wonders, right? So signing this contract, you're not actually getting screwed. I'm sorry. You're going to get no sympathy from me. The Chris Jones thing I found complicated because he was right there with Nick Bosa. He could have been the defensive player of the year. He was the best defensive player for a team that won the Super Bowl, and their defense was really good. But his contract was about to end, and he was making essentially $20 million. So technically, was he underpaid? 100%. But I think the Chiefs were in somewhat of a precarious situation because anytime you're signing a guy to a third contract, it makes teams nervous, right? For the most part, teams want to sign their quarterback to third contracts. Most of the other players, that's usually when you transition. And I think the Chiefs, who have a very good track record, right? The reason they traded Tyreek Hill is because they couldn't afford everybody. They would not have been able to afford their squad the way it's currently constructed with Tyreek Hill making what he got. So they had to trade him. You don't think they realized how awesome he was? I mean, you think they're idiots? They knew what they were trading. And I'm a little shocked that he's tried as hard as I almost underestimated him. Like I have actually more respect for him. Not that I thought he was going to go be like Antonio Brown when he went to the Raiders, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. And I feel like he's trying harder. He's trying to up his legacy. I got nothing but respect for Tyreek Hill. But I understand this situation was a little complicated. But the Chiefs clearly weren't budging. and they weren't going to break down. And Chris Jones ultimately lost, right? Like, it's not like he got a huge raise. They essentially incentivized the fines in which they are legally obligated to fine him back. So he's going to make about $24-25 million if he hits his incentives. Well, he was scheduled to make $19.5, and he got fined $3.5 million. So the two Mafia guys he was sitting with at the game, I don't know what was actually accomplished. Like, what did you guys get out of this? Maybe you avoided injuries in training camp, but you missed a game where the incentives, I'm sure, were on the table that he would have been able to hit and then be closer to his 12 and 15.5 sack totals. So I think this was just poorly executed, and it was dumb. Like, some business moves backfire, and we've seen them in the history of the league. Guys get rewarded for, standing strong. I remember being a kid, Emmitt Smith was like, I'm holding out. I want a raise. Jerry's like, no chance. Then the Cowboys went 0-2, and Emmitt got his raise. This situation, the Chiefs went 0-1, are like, guys, we've been to 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. We're not losing that much sleep. We want you to be here. We're willing to incentivize. But if you think we're going to throw $90 million at you, like, I'm sorry, buddy. We'll see you week 8. And I think they knew, like, they were fucking with two guys, Andy and Veach, that weren't going to flinch. And Katz, like, my advice to Chris Jones is, like, this is why you get CAA. This is why you get Drew Rosenhaus. They typically don't make these stupid decisions because you have a big year. You're only 28, 29 years old. You'll break the bank again. You'll get a 3-year, fully guaranteed $100 million, or they franchise tag you and trade you for a huge contract. So I think we have to acknowledge sometimes with these holdouts in the NFL, they're not all equal. Some of them work and they have huge financial windfalls for the players. And some of them are moronic and have consequences. And this one clearly, like, was a waste of time. Jason Peters, I've talked about this before, but when I was in the NFL, there were very, very strict rules about the practice squad. It was kind of like the old redshirt rules in college football, that once you played, like, if you were a young player and you were on a crappy team and you end up playing 6 or 7 regular season games, your practice squad eligibility disappeared. And so many players kind of washed out of the NFL. They changed this rule, I think, during the 2020 season because it was all out of whack. But previously, it limited a lot of guys' careers. And they basically just threw out every limitation to get on a practice squad. There aren't any. You could be, Tom Brady could be on a practice squad. Jason Peters is 41 years old. He's a 9-time Pro Bowler. 41 years old. Seattle put him on the practice squad. And clearly they're doing that because they don't want to mess with their roster yet. They don't know quite their injury situations. And it's an easy way to get a look at a player in practice. Now, I think part of it is, owners, previously the money has dramatically jumped. So paying guys $10,000 for the week is like me and you paying a guy $5 to take out our trash. I mean, it means nothing to these guys. Where previously, when the league wasn't quite as profitable as it is now, those add up. And now nobody cares. And this is just a good life lesson. Money's all relative. And the more money you make, it's amazing the things you'll do that when you previously didn't have the money, you would have thrown up in your mouth even thinking about it. And this is a good example of that because it didn't just expand strictly. It had to the COVID year because everything was so weird. But the reason they didn't go back is they realized, like, what were we really arguing over? Who actually cares? These rules were archaic and we don't even notice this money missing. And so I'm glad that the practice squad rules allow stuff like this to happen. And I give Jason Peters a lot of credit. I was around him when I was with the Eagles in the peak of his powers. He was, when I first got there, he was like Trent Williams. I mean, he was the best left tackle. He was a freak. I mean, he was an elite player. And obviously at 41 years old, he's nowhere near the same guy. He's a little bigger now. But the guy likes football, man. He likes football and he can still play a little bit. So props to him for keep going strong. Cam Heyward, a guy that was on this podcast in the offseason, just, one of the highest character, potential man of the year in the NFL and one of the stalwarts for the Steelers. I mean, countless team, years in a row, team captain, just an all-out stud, is having surgery. I saw Tomlin acknowledged it. I don't know if he tore or just has something wrong, bad injury to the groin, and that sucks. Big Cam Heyward fan. Well, I was a fan of the Steelers. I mean, I'm rooting for them to be good. I picked them to win the North. They got Dante Johnson. He's out for a while. You got Heyward out. I got Kenny Pickett looking like a scrub. I'm a little nervous. Now, I don't know, are the Browns just going to maintain it? I like the Steelers this week for sure in terms of gambling. I'll promise you they're going to throw the kitchen sink at them. But weekend, some injuries, what I saw, I'm not saying they were gutless, but God, at home, getting shoved around like that. And if your quarterback plays average, they'd be in trouble, and they'd be in trouble fast. So I'm not jumping off the Steelers bandwagon, but I'm for sure not as confident as I was, 8 days ago. And last but not least, the NFL, they didn't release the numbers, but I think they put out a press release, or I saw Florio wrote it, that so far the YouTube TV ticket, the NFL package that's on YouTube TV, has flown by the DirecTV in terms of subscriptions. And I do think a big reason it's twofold. One, it's so easy to get, right? So many people now, even if you aren't a streamer, like you still have cable boxes, which I understand, depending on where you live, the internet. Some people, right, they still have the ability to stream, and it's so easy. And that was so seamless. And so many people, and on number two, like a lot of us stream, and a lot of us use YouTube TV. So it was literally just one button, and it could not have been any easier. And like I said, when I turned on my TV on Sunday morning, I realized I don't even have Red Zone. Well, back in the day with a cable provider, you'd have to call, you'd have to figure it out. I went to my computer, I pressed one button, and boom, Red Zone popped up on my television. And then through the NFL ticket, it creates all these boxes, right? It gives you all the different combinations of the games going on. It also gives you combinations like 3 and 4 boxes, some with Red Zone and 3 games. It's incredible. And they're not even like, they still have ability to improve the product. Like they're only scratching the surface. You don't figure it out on day one. And the thing I know with these tech companies is their ability to change on the fly. This isn't, it could look differently by October 1st than it does today. So I'm very pleased. I thought I said I gave it an A-. The only reason I didn't just give it an A, because, you can't pick the boxes yet. That's coming. But for being week one of, what I was looking for, I was pleased. And the seamlessness of being able to use it. And I do believe this more and more. I just got my house that I'm remodeling basically hardwired. It's not cheap, but I had this guy basically hardwire my entire house. So, because I'm going to stream all my TVs, I'm going to be on YouTube TV, and I'm hardwiring all the televisions and a lot, like, I'm a podcaster, so I want to have hardwire the internet in multiple rooms. But I'm excited to see how that turns out, because I haven't had any issues in the office I'm sitting in, and I just use the Wi-Fi. So once you hardwire it, I highly recommend it now. And I would imagine that's a service that will become much more cheap, just much more consumer friendly in terms of the price point over the years, right? Just like televisions. 15, 20 years ago, a big screen TV was very expensive. Now you can go to Costco, get like a 70-incher for like $600. I'm telling you, the thing that has been the most inflation proof, I feel, over the years, and this was well before things got out of hand the last couple of years, has just been televisions. They've constantly gone down in prices. And then you go to Target or you go to Costco, you can just get, I'm going to buy an 85-inch TV for like $900 at Target. How do you beat that? I remember being a kid in like the late 90s, people paying thousands of dollars for this thing that looked the size of a Suburban. It was massive. And looking back, it wasn't even that clear. So I'm pretty sure the guy my dad worked for, we used to go to his house. He's the only guy I knew in town that had a big screen TV. The thing was as big as a van. It was huge. I'm pretty sure at the time, this would have been like late 90s. It was like $10,000. And it wasn't even that great a quality. It was just cool because it was big. But the price points on these TVs, when you go to some of these stores, are just fantastic. And as someone who makes his living watching TV, I can't complain.